You want to get the salespeople away from thinking of their mindset and on to thinking about the customer's mindset, more customer conscious than self-conscious.
Welcome back to the Thoughts on Selling podcast. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to have Jeff Lipsius joining us. Jeff has been thinking about sales and what goes on inside people's heads for a long, long time. And he and I originally connected over a post I made about the inner game of coaching. Before we get started down this particular conversation path, Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself? Give us a little bit of background as to who you are and how you came to writing the book, Selling to the Point, which I'll note now is 8 years old. It's been out there for a while. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Thank you very much, Lee. Thanks for having me. So originally, this is a story about applying Timothy Gallwey's inner game principles to sales performance. If you're not familiar with Timothy Gallwey in the inner game, he's really known as the father of modern coaching. And back in the 1970s, he came out with a book, one of the best-selling sports books ever, called The Inner Game of Tennis. And although it was originally about tennis, it became, like I said, a basis for all performance coaching ever since. I mean, this book became the beginning of the performance coaching field now. And a lot of coaches, Pete Carroll, the Seattle Seahawks, and many coaches from around the world, Steve Kerr, who's the basketball coach for the San Francisco Warriors, Tom Brady. I mean, this is their Bible for achieving peak performance.
Right. And the theory is that our brains get in the way of what our bodies know to do from a sports standpoint.
From every standpoint, from a performance standpoint, yeah. Sports performance, decision performance, leadership performance, whatever performance it is. And the reason you're talking about getting in our own way. Okay, so let me explain this. This is how inner game works. If we're going to talk about peak performance, okay, and we could define that as performing beyond expectations. Well, then by definition, you can't expect to perform beyond your expectations. So what that's essentially saying is that trying to achieve peak performance is the very thing that's going to interfere with actually achieving it. Mm-hmm. Simple example. If you're trying to get to sleep, how's that work for you?
Yeah, not so good.
It's actually trying to sleep is the very thing that's going to keep you up at night.
Right. Or if I try to hit a home run, I'm going to be so conscious of swinging, watching for the ball and swinging and timing and woof, there goes another one.
Right. Because peak performance always needs to be a surprise. So if we're trying to achieve it, it's going to interfere. And trying to do anything actually interferes with the action. If I'm trying to like you, do I like you? If I'm trying to have fun, am I having fun? I mean, people don't think about this, but it's very counterintuitive.
There is a famous philosopher, Jeff, who years ago said, do or do not. There is no try.
Oh, well, that was Yoda.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. We're talking about achieving peak performance rather than trying to achieve peak performance. Mm-hmm. Okay. Two entirely different things.
Yeah.
So if you can't try to achieve peak performance, you want to achieve peak performance, but you can't try, what do you do?
Sounds like an oxymoron. Sounds like it makes sense. Tell me more.
This is the innovation of inner game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So inner game is basically saying that you can't win the outer game unless you win the inner game. Mm-hmm. For an example, what's outer, what's inner? Well, if I'm playing tennis against Djokovic and I'm 70 years old and,
and
he's in his 30s and I get a game, he beats me 6-1, 6-0. Mm-hmm. Well, he won the outer game. He got a better score. But for a 70-year-old to get a game off of Novak Djokovic, I feel like a winner. I mean, I exceeded my expectations for myself and played up to my full potential. So I won the inner game even though I lost the outer game. You have to trust that if you win the inner game, the outer game's going to take care of itself. So if I play up to my full potential as a tennis player every time, I don't need to worry about the score. Score's going to take care of itself. I played my best each time. However, if I focus on the score, trying to win, I'll be distracted from my inner game and it'll interfere. So that's the basic principle of inner game, trusting the potential and paying attention to the potential, what's inner and what's outer. So, for example, in selling, it turns out for sales performance, selling is outer and buying is inner.
Right. And what's worse is the outer game measurement comes months after the game is played, right? I have a conversation with a prospect. 4 months later, the contract is signed or not signed, right? And a month after that, I see the results in Salesforce. So the outer game is totally disconnected from the inner game from a scoring standpoint.
Actually, the scoring standpoint is measuring the inner game. Did the customer buy? Okay. See, buying is inner. It's called decision making, and it goes on between.
Wait. We're hurrying on to your core theory. I don't want to get there yet.
Okay.
Because that decision support is too important of a topic for us to ease into.
Okay.
I want to hit that one head on. Let's stick with the inner versus outer. So, for instance, if I'm calling on an enterprise client, I might have 30 conversations with them before their inner game makes that decision.
Sure.
And so along the way, there's no external measurement of he won or I won. There's the accumulation of I did the right thing, I did the right thing, I did the right thing. I made a mistake. I did the right thing, I did the right thing, I did the right thing. And even that's making, is blurring what actually happens.
Well, there's a decision process.
Yeah.
So if you have 30 conversations with the customer, all the time, there's a decision process taking place that starts, the first time you're interacting. So
they get to choose whether to have that next conversation.
Oh, sure.
Or in landmark terms, they get to decide because it's not a either or. It's the non-choice gets killed. So that's a decision.
Right. What I'm saying, though, is that your selling performance, did you say the right things? Did you follow the script? Are you thinking the interaction's going your way or not going your way? That's outer. Okay. That's your selling performance.
Got it.
And no matter how good your selling performance is, it's not what you're being paid for.
Okay. So So now we're going to hit it. Now we're going to get to the job of a salesperson. Law number one.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell us what law number one is.
Law number one in my book is that the goal of selling isn't selling. It's buying.
If I told that to 1,000 sales executives, they would say, wait, what?
Yeah, because it's almost like ego interference. We're so invested in wanting to take credit for what we said and wanting to be in control that we're missing the point. The point of selling is buying and the customer's decision process, which is going to be yes or no.
Right.
And helping the customer make a better decision so that you have a good buying performance.
Right. And so
not a good selling.
Here's the disconnect, Jeff. And I've only been in enterprise sales for 3 or 4 decades. I won't give the actual number out.
Ever since you were 2.
Ever since I was 2.
Wow.
And I've been in sales enablement for much of that, helping sales organizations perform better. So I've run across a couple of these critters, and everyone says, our stuff is the best, our stuff is the best, our stuff is the best, our stuff is the best. If customers don't buy our stuff, they're stupid. It's the inside out view of the world from the salesperson, from the sales organization of we, me, I.
Mhm.
And what you're saying is all of that is bullshit because it has nothing to do with the me, I, me, the product. It's the customer's world
Yeah.
and what's going on in that world, and how
Mhm.
can we help that customer make a decision so that they can get better results.
Right. I mean, you would say it's bullshit. I think it's just a side agenda. To be able to have a good selling performance, to be able to tell your manager that you said all the different points that you were taught in class. Well, the customer doesn't go to your class, so they don't know how they're
and the
supposed to.
salespeople don't pay attention in class either. So it's a
Yeah,
complete wash.
right. They don't pay attention to class because the customers never follow those lines anyway. So it's
yes.
Yeah.
And so first, the people don't learn that way. So adult learning theory suggests that you fill someone full of information and then test to make sure that they remember it. That doesn't make them capable of using that information. And then the customers are going to pivot to something else anyway.
It goes deeper than that.
Please tell me more.
It goes deeper than that because we're talking about outer and inner. Learning is inner and teaching is outer.
Oh, that is so clear. Yep.
Okay. So the goal of teaching is learning. And they're two different levels. So you could have teaching without learning, and you could have learning without teaching.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. We're talking about a salesperson going in class and hearing all the selling points. They're not listening anyway. Okay. Let's think for a minute. What would it look like if we were watching a salesperson in peak performance? They're interacting with the customer and they're just like killing it. Okay. Peak performance.
Yeah.
Well, one of the qualities of the salesperson that you and I would notice is that a salesperson happens to be really good at thinking on their feet. The customer gives them an unexpected response, but this peak performance salesperson just handles it masterfully.
The art of improvisation.
Exactly. So here's the point. You can't teach a salesperson to think on their feet. And getting back to the inner game principle, if you try to teach a salesperson to think on their feet, you'll be interfering.
Right. You can help them develop that skill. You can help them become aware of the need for a pivot, but you can't teach them the mechanics of doing it. They can only practice and learn.
Right. Because if the salesperson is interacting with the customer, you don't want a salesperson thinking about what you taught them when they're in the middle of the conversation.
Right.
Okay. So a true sales leader, sales trainer who's going to be performance oriented will say to a salesperson, I'm not your teacher. Your customer is your teacher. And my job is to show you how you can learn from them.
I love that. That's the definition of a coach, right?
It's coaching 101. Yeah.
I love that. That just made every sales manager cringe.
And by the way,
I don't have time to coach.
By the way, the sales manager is not going to be around when the salesperson's having this conversation with the customer.
Right.
Okay. As a matter of fact, the salesperson might get a promotion or might actually transfer, and whatever the sales manager taught the salesperson goes with them. Okay. If a sales manager, a sales trainer, shows salespeople how to make the customer the teacher, now you have a perpetual source of learning for that salesperson.
Right.
It's always going to be a customer.
Right.
And the salesperson is a continuous learner now.
Right. Because the teacher is omnipresent.
Yes. The teacher
is omnipresent.
Is omnipresent. Yes.
Okay. So now let's go back to the beginnings.
Okay.
So tell me the story of how you and Tim got together and Tim's focus on sports and tennis, and there's this video that you can find on the internet of him teaching an older woman to play tennis quite well, who had never picked up a racket before, in about 20 minutes without ever saying a word about how to swing a racket.
Right. Not a single instruction.
Yeah.
And in 20 minutes, she's hitting forehands, backhands, and serves over the net and into the court.
And her serve is better than mine ever was.
Yeah. Well, okay. So from the beginning, I guess we skipped this part, but originally I was an aspiring tennis pro back in the 70s. And I read Tim's book. It was really, it helped my game. It helped my personal life. I just had to meet Tim.
Yeah.
I actually met him at a meditation retreat in Florida. We got to be friends over the years. Now, I didn't make it in the pros, so I needed a real job. And I ended up being a salesperson. Well, as the years went by, I became vice president of the company. And I said to Tim, hey, why don't we try applying your inner game of tennis principles to sales performance?
Wait. There was something that happened just before you made that statement to him.
Okay.
What was the connection you made, right? What was the aha moment of, I read Tim's books. It helped me in tennis. It helped me in my life. Now I have a team of salespeople who are struggling to do what they need to do. If they only forgot about how to sell and just started selling, right? What was that aha moment for you?
Well, I was having I was having a conversation with Tim. I mean, I was always a big fan of inner game, so I knew somehow there was tremendous potential in applying inner game to selling, which was my new role now as running a sales force and having. So what I did is I said to Tim, if we do this experiment, we could use my sales force as a laboratory.
Yep. With
all your different principles. But the real moment came when Tim and I were having a conversation about how to go about this. And he said something very interesting. He goes, you have to remember, Jeff, that the inner game is really the outer game, and the outer game is really the inner game. Sounds like a mouthful. He went on to explain how when he gives a tennis lesson, like you and I are talking about when he was teaching this older woman, Molly, and what he basically said to her was, say, bounce when the ball bounces and hit when it hits your racket.
Right.
Later on, he would say, watch the seams of the ball.
Right. There was a step prior to that, and it was she watched what good looks like.
I'm sorry?
Right. She watched what good looks like. Didn't she watch Tim hit before she picked up a racket?
Yeah, she saw him hitting a couple shots.
There was a model built in her mind of what good looks like.
What happened was Tim wanted her to just watch it first. So somebody was tossing balls at Tim, and Tim would hit a few, and then Tim stepped away, and the ball tosser was now just tossing balls with nobody to hit him. And Tim said, when you feel like you want to hit a ball, go ahead and give it a try.
Right.
So right away, he was giving her the option to just watch, or to go ahead and hit it. Okay, without there being any right or wrong. She wasn't supposed to hit it, just whenever she felt like she wanted to. Yeah.
Right. And normally there's so much judgment in, oh, I missed. Oh, I should do it differently. And in that example, there wasn't any judgment made.
Right, because he created a game called bounce hit. So it didn't matter where the ball landed, as long as she said the word bounce when it bounced on the court and hit when it hit a racket. That's all she was focused on. The actual getting it over the net and into the court was inadvertent. It just was beside the point.
Right.
And so it got her very aware. To continue my point now about the inner game is the outer game and the outer game is the inner game.
Yeah.
So Tim was referring to this, and he said the bounce, when the ball bounces on the court, is outer. Saying hit when the ball hits your racket is outer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not inner.
Mm-hmm.
So he did the inner game lesson, actually having her focus on things that are outer. He said, what would happen if instead I have her focus on something that's inner
Mm-hmm.
and say something to her like, notice your nervousness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, or be more confident.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't work because she would just be judging herself. Am I confident enough?
Right.
Yeah, it would be a distraction. So the inner game is applied to outer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I realized, the salespeople are mistakenly focused on their mindset. That's inner. And what I need to do with inner game of selling to apply inner game to selling is get them focused outer.
Mm-hmm.
So for salespeople, what would be the ball? It's the customer.
Right.
And what would be bounce hit? It would be the customer's decision process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I realized it's actually, you want to get the salespeople away from thinking of their mindset and on to thinking about the customer's mindset.
Right.
Being more customer conscious than self-conscious.
This is absolutely fascinating. And I'm just running through prior experiences. You know, salespeople spend 80% of their time not talking to customers. They spend 80% of their time or more surrounded by their peers, surrounded by products, surrounded by their sales leaders, surrounded by product literature. Mm-hmm. And then a customer comes in and their their focus has to shift.
Absolutely, yeah.
We don't teach salespeople to do that. We don't train them to change that focus. And again,
no, they don't have their eye on the ball. You got to, as a sales coach, you have to tell salespeople, watch the ball, keep your eye on the ball.
Keep your eye on the decision process.
Yeah. You know.
Mm-hmm. Where most people are looking at something that's totally irrelevant to the moment, which is the question, are they going to sign or not?
Right. Is this conversation going my way or is it not going my way? Mm-hmm. Well, if that's going through your mind, you're distracted.
Right. And that's a judgment call.
Yeah. And if you're a customer, we've all been customers as well. Mm-hmm. What would you want your salesperson to be focused on? You.
Yeah. It feels so good when they, yeah.
Well, okay. Well, now we have teamwork. Mm-hmm. Now we have salespeople and customers working together toward a common goal.
And only if it's authentic, because there are so many inauthentic situations in which the salesperson says, I want you to make the best decision. And what they mean is, I want to book a deal.
Well, yeah, that's fine, but you can't fake paying attention. I mean, you're either paying attention or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you're either customer conscious or you're not customer conscious. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that the reason the selling profession has this negative stigma is because salespeople and customers typically don't have the same goal. The customer wants to make the best decision and the salesperson wants to get the sale. So right there is going to be friction.
And in fact, when I went to buy my last car, the decision for me was something I just had to get past so that car could be in my driveway. Same thing with customers. If I'm buying a new ERP system, I'm actually not focused on the acquisition and the implementation. I'm focused a year down the road of, with that new ERP system, hopefully my life will be better. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what customers ultimately care about. And the decision, the evaluation of risk is, and vendors and possibilities is a waypoint, is a milestone along that process. But it's not the payoff for the customer.
Right. So is the customer in touch with their pain? How much does the customer really need that ERP system? Mm-hmm. And what's the value of getting a new ERP system?
Mm-hmm. And what's the risk of making a decision?
Yes.
These days, risk management is near top of the list for a lot of customers of, if I do nothing, I know what business as usual looks like.
Yeah.
Whereas if I do something, I could get fired.
Right. So let's take a closer look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's inner and there's outer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can't.
There's a recurring theme here, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, that's why you had me on. Okay. So you can't win the inner game. You can't win the outer game, rather,
Mm-hmm.
without winning the inner game.
Right.
Okay. Now we're talking about risk,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about the salesperson. If you talk to them about risk, you talk to them about trust is involved here.
Mm-hmm.
The salesperson is going to say, well, I want the customer to trust me. So I'm going to give them advice,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to earn the customer's trust. Okay.
So first you have to earn the right to give them advice.
Right. Because you've earned their trust.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. That's outer trust, the customer's trust of the salesperson.
Yeah.
You can't get outer trust without establishing inner trust.
And so when you say inner trust, what do you mean by that?
Great question. Inner trust is the customer's self-trust in their ability to make a good decision.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
If the customer lacks self-trust, they won't be able to trust themselves to decide if they trust the salesperson.
Right. And here we arrive at closed, no decision.
Yes, because not that the salesperson wasn't trustworthy,
Mm-hmm.
but the customer didn't trust themselves to decide if they could trust the salesperson.
Right. And many salespeople and sales leaders will bully that customer until the customer makes the decision to call security.
That's what typically happens. But we always think in terms of the customer trusting us, when in fact, coaching 101
Mm-hmm.
is going to be the customer self-trust, right? If you're a decision coach for your customer,
Mm-hmm.
and your customer has some self-doubt because there's an element of risk involved in making this decision,
Mm-hmm.
the salesperson, as decision coach, is going to need to help the customer gain more confidence.
Right. And part of where I focus is the conversation about the requirements of change management. Right. So the customer says, okay, if I do this, what's going to change in my world?
Mm-hmm.
And the salesperson can bolster the confidence of the customer by saying, here's what and maybe this sounds like an outer conversation, but here are the things you'll need to do to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Here's the map of what success looks like
Mm-hmm.
after you say yes.
That's potentially an option. How you can provide more confidence, I think, has to do with the source of the customer's self-doubt.
Right.
So a salesperson would have to do a little more probing to find out, what's getting in the way between them and their confidence in their ability to make a good decision.
Right. So one of my expected criteria for any enterprise deal with my coaching clients is customers never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
They've been the CIO for this organization for 3 years. They've been the CMO for 2 years. They've been the CFO for 10 years. They've never done this before. This is their first time doing this. This is their first time acquiring this. And so there's a lot of self-doubt of how do I make the right decision? They're present to the I know what I don't know.
Mm.
They're also present sometimes to the there's a bunch of stuff I don't know that I don't know, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also a certain amount of self-empowerment too.
Mm-hmm.
Am I empowering myself to be able to make this decision? Sometimes it's a big decision.
Right.
They might not even give themselves the option.
Right.
I mean, salespeople are in the job of providing a greater range of options for customers to solve problems.
Yet we're so adversarial. Is that because we've trained customers to see us as being on the other side of the table?
A customer is going to project that onto a salesperson, no matter what the salesperson's real intentions are.
Mm-hmm. Until they earn, yeah.
And though the customer can see that, in fact, the salesperson is really helping them make a better quality decision, and the biggest obstacles to decision quality are within the customer themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Not the salesperson is the least of the customer's problems.
Mm-hmm.
The customer has self-limiting beliefs. The customer has self-doubts. The customer might not have a clear goal. I mean, all kinds of things that salespeople can help customers with that had nothing to do with the salesperson's intentions one way or another.
Right. I have a coaching client at IBM who fully embraced her superpower as an empath and as a listener, and has grown head and shoulders over all of the tech bros around her because they don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the listener.
Mm-hmm.
And in just a few months, she's become their leader because she hears what the customer needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's been exciting to see that development.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, customers, they want to be seen. They want to be heard. Listening, which is awareness, which is observation, is the basis of all performance.
Mm-hmm.
Because we perform by learning and we learn by listening. So as we become better listeners,
Mm-hmm.
we become better learners. As we become better learners, we become better performers.
Right. And in sports, sometimes it's not listening, but observing.
Yeah. There's other kinds of observation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in business, it's mostly listening,
Mm-hmm.
and listening not always to what people are saying,
Mm-hmm.
but their intent behind their words, or the pain behind their words, or what they're saying
Mm-hmm.
between the lines, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think in your book, you take it one step further. You give an example of
Mm-hmm.
a good salesperson who was present to the fact that the person that they were talking to was uncomfortable and their manager was in the next cubicle.
Mm-hmm.
And so the instruction that you outlined is, well, remove that person from that uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
So let's get into the book, published in 2016, called Selling to the Point.
Okay.
It's a love story about selling. Sorry, no, it's not a love story. Yes, it is a love story.
Yeah, it
about
is.
Selling.
Uh-huh.
And it's a fiction book.
Yes, it's a novel.
It's a novel. One of the few novels about selling that
Mm-hmm.
I've come across.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. Jeff, why did you choose to write it as a novel?
Simply put, I wanted to walk my talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything I'm saying here is that salespeople need to learn from observation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You need to have your eye on the ball.
Yep.
And whatever you prepare, throw it out because you just don't know what the customer is going to come up with at the moment, and you need to respond to that.
Right.
Okay. So how can I get the reader to actually have the experience
Mm-hmm.
of learning from observation? Well, if I make it a story, then the principles can emerge from the dialogues between the characters.
If it weren't so obvious, Jeff, I'd say that's brilliant. But it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I compare that harshly with a book I started to read and couldn't finish by someone that runs a training organization. And I listened to it on an audiobook, and I couldn't decide which was louder, the yelling or the ego. And I couldn't get past the first chapter.
Yeah.
And that, to your point, that's not how people learn.
That's not how people learn. And salespeople need to be the learner, not the teacher.
Mm-hmm. And it's and positioning the customer as the source of the education is brilliant, mm-hmm. because then it's up to the onus falls on the salesperson, mm-hmm. to pay attention to the lesson.
Yes.
Then they don't have the out of saying, I didn't get enough coaching time. Well, if you want more coaching time, go call on more customers.
Yeah. So that's how it works.
So here's an interesting conversation, Jeff. There's a book that hit the street about 3 years ago. And the finding was, we've watched tens of thousands of salespeople in interactions with customers over Zoom. And now the goal is to help people decide.
Mm-hmm.
This was Matt Dixon who wrote The Jolt Effect, and before that, The Challenger Sale. Before Jolt, he wrote The Challenger Sale. Your book predates his by 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Also focusing on helping customers make good decisions.
Yeah.
And he had the data, and it's a very good book. It's pretty intellectual. I got a lot out of it, but he doesn't tell a story.
He doesn't tell a story, and I didn't read the book, but I'm not sure he gives a actual methodology for doing that. I mean, my book actually goes into what are called the 3 C's
Mm-hmm.
of high quality decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what I discovered is that, and Tim Gallwey helped me with this, you see something very similar in his tennis book. There are 3 things a customer needs in order to make the best decision.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about these things already. The first thing is self-trust. The customer needs to trust themselves to make a good decision. If a customer has self-doubt about their decision ability, it's going to be an inappropriately conservative decision.
Right.
The second would be empowerment or choice. In other words, a customer needs to have a sufficient range of options that they feel they can choose from.
Mm-hmm.
The interference to that would be self-limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you were giving the example of a customer who feels if they make a decision, they're going to get judged.
Mm-hmm.
So it really narrows the range of options they have for, what they can buy and not buy. And salespeople have to help increase that range. And the third would be clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially, a lot of it would be, is the customer in touch with their pain? Now, does the customer really know how much they need it? And need also equates to value.
Mm-hmm.
So price is outer and value is inner.
Right. And so for those of us that love discovery, and discovery, as many organizations view discovery as like the third step in the selling process, where we get to find out how big the thing is we can sell them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is bullshit.
Yeah.
Because discovery really is co-creation. It's helping the customer discover what's possible and what's standing in the way. The ramifications of the as-is state and the possibilities of the to-be state.
Yeah. I mean, customers are not always clear what they want. I mean, a lot of times salespeople get trained, well, you find out what the customer wants and then you give it to them. Most customers don't exactly know what they want. That's why they're talking.
My 6-year-old daughter asked for a pony. If I gave her a pony, she wouldn't have known what to do with it.
Yeah. By the way, do children make good salespeople?
So the client I mentioned before, she has 2 young children and 2 young boys, and their favorite question is why.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask her why constantly.
Yeah.
And it's the Japanese Kaizen method too, right? Of getting to the source of the issue, asking the customer, why would you want to do this? Why is that important to you? Why? So to your point,
that's how they handle objections. That nobody taught them to do that. They're natural salespeople handling objections. Do they close? Little children, will they close?
Absolutely.
Yeah, never fails.
Absolutely.
How about, will they seek alternative decision makers?
Sure. Mom said no.
Yeah. Who taught them to do that? It's a very natural thing. Salespeople, you don't need to teach it. Selling can be fun. What's not fun is trying to sell. Selling itself is like a child can do it.
Yeah. You know, Jeff, I wish you had told me this earlier, because for 15 years at Oracle and Google, I would tell people, do or do not, there is no try. I would write on the board try in a circle and then put a line through it. And now I know who to attribute it to.
Tim Gallwey.
And you.
And me. I'm a good listener. He's a smart guy.
I haven't finished the book yet.
Okay. I won't tell you if they get married at the end.
That's the Hallmark script.
Right.
What other insights should I expect to find in the book if I'm paying attention?
Well, I get into what are called buying points. And buying points are things you could put the customer's attention onto.
Mm-hmm. Such as?
That would help them make a better decision.
Okay.
Well, it could be getting them in touch with pain. It could be getting them in touch with something that they trust. It just depends. The idea of the buying point is to help the customers be in a optimal frame of mind. I'll use a continuum for customer frame of mind, okay? Because people talk about salesperson mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the optimal customer mindset? Well, if we were going to have a continuum, like what would be for a salesperson the least favorable customer mindset, and what would be the most favorable customer mindset? Right. Okay,
right. The least would be I have no interest in outside input. I do not trust the salesperson to tell me anything. I don't trust myself to make a decision.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a little salesperson oriented, but I mean, if it was totally customer oriented, it would simply be, I'm trying to decide.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's in alignment with what we talked about earlier. Yep.
Yeah. Trying to decide, like trying to sell is negative for a salesperson. Trying to decide is negative for a customer.
Right.
And the equivalent would be, I'm sitting on a fence. I'm of two minds. Not a pleasant feeling. Salespeople don't want to hear that.
Right.
What I came up with as the optimal mindset for a customer is a no-brainer, because a no-brainer, it's effortless. It's so obvious. The customer, it's almost zen.
In retail, we used to call it a lay down. You could lay down in front of the customer and they would still give you their credit card.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the decision to buy is such a no-brainer.
Right.
Okay. Right. Now, the buying points in my book and how to come up with buying points are basically to help customers enter a mindset of that of a no-brainer.
So if we manage the customer's mindset, we will get to a point where the customer ultimately says, when can we do this?
Not necessarily. No, that maybe it'll be clear that they shouldn't do it.
Right. So because the decision isn't always positive. A decision sometimes is, I'm not doing this.
Right. What you want is a high quality decision.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't want to judge what that decision is going to be. It'll distract you.
Right. So this brings up a great conversation. Most salespeople aren't okay with the I'm not going to buy decision. Great salespeople aren't attached to that outcome.
Exactly.
Great. Appreciate the fact you made a decision. I appreciate the clarity. Let's agree to move on, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah. And it also helps salespeople with prospecting, being able to look for customers that possess the qualities that are most likely to have buying their product be a good decision.
So are those psychographic qualities? Are they individual statements that people make? How does it?
Anything. I mean, it could be either one of those. Depends where you get your data. Constantly learning, constantly refining. So you increase your prospecting so that you're with a certain population of customers where buying your product would be a good decision.
I love that. Jeff, what's next for you?
What's next for me? I'm continuing to train sales forces with Tim Gallwey. And we're doing this worldwide. We have a couple partners now that are learning to teach inner game of selling themselves. So they're going to be doing this in other languages, in other countries. So I'm training inner game of selling trainers right now. Somebody in Paris. We're looking at China. We're looking at India, actually Vietnam. Quite a few other places. So we're expanding worldwide actually right now.
Yeah. So I've gone through the Inner Game for Coaches workshop with Renato as facilitator from Sao Paulo, and I'm looking forward to participating in the Inner Game for Facilitators workshop in the spring.
Oh, great! Yes, train the trainer.
Train the trainer. Yep.
Yes, that's coming up.
Yeah. The alignment here is very, very strong.
Yeah, and actually, I'll be co-facilitating that. So
Excellent.
I will see you. I will see you at the workshop.
Excellent. So a couple of key messages. First one is it's not about selling, it's about buying.
Mm-hmm.
It's about helping the customer make good decisions.
Mm-hmm.
It's being aware that the more you know, the more you're confused.
The more you're taught.
The more you're taught, the more you're confused. The salesperson's job is to help customers make better buying decisions. And sometimes the decision can be no.
Yeah.
And people need to be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. The salesperson's role is to be their customer's decision coach
Mm-hmm.
and not the trusted advisor. Because advising and coaching are two entirely different things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Advising is outer and coaching is inner.
Can you do both?
Yeah, you can do both, although coaching would be superior because then the customer has a greater level of ownership in the decision they made. They own it, feel like it's their decision. Yeah.
Right. Jeff, this has been fabulous. I'll put a link in the show notes to your book, Selling to the Point, which is available on
Amazon.
LinkedIn which is available on Amazon as both paperback and
Kindle. Yeah.
I would love to see it as an Audible book.
Yeah. That's hard because we have all these different characters.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do a lady's voice.
Right. Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Although there's a series of books about the purpose of a dog, and the single narrator provides the inner voice of the dog from puppy to elderly dog, male and female.
Oh.
But it's sequential. So
yeah, that's above my pay grade.
So thank you again, Jeff. It's been a pleasure.
Lee, thank you. This has been great.
I look forward to continuing our conversation, either one-on-one, both one-on-one, and next year at the Inner Game workshops.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, have a great holiday and New Year, and we'll be in touch.